Hello everyone, it is Aussies Elect back very soon after my previous video, but I've got another thing I want to discuss with you today, and it is a hung parliament. A hung parliament is somewhat likely. Um, Everyone always thinks that it's like quite likely, and then an election happens and a government gets a majority, but um, with the growing number of third party and independent seats in Parliament, which could grow with this Voices for Climate people, which we will discuss a little bit in this video. Um, there's always a possibility of a hung Parliament, and today we will talk about every sort of particular scenario of a hung Parliament and what it could mean for each of the major parties. So let's discuss the scenario that you see right here on your screen, which is basically the status quo. This is what things look like at the moment. We're just going to assume, for whatever reason, that Craig Kelly wins his seat a few years back. In this scenario, the coalition will take government. They'll get a majority with Craig Kelly or with Katter. I mean, Katter is not like a sure thing for the coalition, but he went with them in 2010. So I don't know. I would bet that Katter would be more likely to go with the coalition. He sort of like has sympathies with the Nationals. He probably would hate me if he heard me say that, but um, it's Katter's always seen as a shoe-in for the coalition. Regardless, even if let's just presume this because Craig Kelly's not going to win his seat. Regardless, in the situation that Labor wins one seat off the coalition, let's say they win Bass off the coalition, um, uh, Labor on 70, coalition on 75. I think it would be very, very unlikely for, um, basically in this scenario, for every single one of um, the third parties or independents to go with Labor. That everyone would give their support to the coalition for confidence supply, which is basically what happened last election, where the coalition were sure to get quite a few more seats than Labor, and so I think Rebecca Sharkey and the independent for Indi, which I'm sorry I can't remember, gave their support for the coalition, and in a situation like this, that would be the same, because it's just too much of a hard ask for everyone to go with. It would be such a unstable parliament if everyone was to go with Labor. So let's start changing things, making it a bit more interesting. All right. So let's say not only do Labor win in Bass, they also win in Chisholm in Victoria. Right. So Labor could govern with the Greens, Andrew Wilkie, so that's 73, and then all three of the sort of small L, quote unquote, independents that currently have seats. So that is Rebecca Sharkey, the independent for Indi, and Zali Steggall, the independent for Warringah. I don't think this is likely. Again, it will be a very unstable parliament. Labor won't have to rely on Katter, but they would have to rely on literally everybody else. So I think in this kind of scenario, I think the coalition still, they have a bit more of a mandate to form government. But it does start to get interesting at this point. And again, it becomes interesting once again when if Labor wins another seat. So let's say Labor win the seat of Braddon in Tasmania. And there we go, Labor on 72, coalition on 73. Now, at this kind of scenario, I think it absolutely will all come down to what these small L independents, Andrew Wilkie and the Greens will side with Labor, that's a given. But these small L independents, these three women, they will, in a situation like this, and probably in a lot of these hung parliament situations, I believe that these three small L independent women will band together and decide together who would they support in a hung parliament. The reason they would do that is because the first reason is that all three of them have very similar voting record. If you go on, they vote for you. All three of them are like seen as best friends on that website, so I think it makes sense for them to form sort of like an alliance, and I think it would make sense for them to all go together because whatever government that gets chosen needs to be as sort of strong and stable as possible. So unless they have like, I don't know what kind of disagreements with each other that they would have. I don't know what they would have as disagreements. So unless they have massive disagreements with each other or with Labour or the coalition, I think they would stick together, and I think that's a likely scenario. And I think it sort of gives me vibes of Rob Oakeshott and Tony Windsor in 2010, where I believe that probably it was greater than likely that they would make a decision together. They wouldn't split because it would be more unstable. So in this situation, Labour 72, Greens and Wilkie, that puts them on 74. So if they were to get all three, that would put them on 77. That's relatively stable. That's a 2-seat majority basically. Whilst the coalition, it would be the same situation for them, where with Katter that's 74, and with them it would be 77. I mean, they won't need Katter actually, so they could govern with these small L independents. So this will definitely be. This will be 2010 all over again, basically, if this scenario happens, and this will be probably the most fucked situation. If this happens, it will be a really hard decision for those small L independent women on what they do, and let's hope it doesn't come to that. I think if Labour then manages to pull off another seat win, say it's Swan in WA, which is another sort of seat that people thinking are likely to go to Labour. I think any higher than what we just had here, I think is sort of like Labour will take government. Because in this situation they'll have 75. They'll only need one more, and so that will put them at like 78 seats is will be very stable. Whilst with the coalition, even if they got all three small independents and Katter, they would only have 76. So even if there was a situation like this, I still think Labour probably will edge it out. I think when it comes to a government that's had 3 terms already, the coalition are kind of on the nose. They're seen as sort of like a tired, weary government that is kind of reached the end of its life cycle. At least this is kind of like how. This is probably just my opinion. This isn't an objective opinion. This is just my opinion. But I think that they can definitely be seen as that. And I think that if there was a situation like this, there would be more than enough reason to retire that government and put in someone new. Especially as like they're seen as sort of they've lost their majority, so they've sort of lost their mandate. So they're. Yeah, so I think in this kind of, even though it would be sort of a tricky ask for these 3 small independents, and like, let me just note something which is very important, and this was the case in 2010 as well. Rob Oakeshott, Tony Windsor, both, if they're not in the seats, safe national seats. These independents, all 3 of them, I'm not sure about Indi and Victoria, but the other 2 are definitely, if it isn't for them, they're safe Liberal seats. I'm not sure if it's in Victoria, if that's the Nationals or the Liberals. So they will be going against the grain, as in going against who probably their electors would want them to go with, which could make them quite unpopular, which is what happened with Tony Windsor and Rob Oakeshott. But they would not be doing it for selfish reasons. They'd be doing it for reasons that they believe is better for the country, much like Tony Windsor and Reb Oxshire. I'm not saying that those reasons are necessarily better for the country, like even though I had to have a particular political persuasion. I'm just saying that that's what they would feel if they was going to go to side with Labour. I think it would be very easy of them electorally to side with the coalition. It will sort of save their asses, but I don't think they will. And I think if Labour wins any more than 72 seats, they get up to 70. If they get up to 73, I think that's a done deal, and that's, Labour will. If they have more seats than the coalition, especially if they win the two-party preferred, I think that will mean that Labour will take government. So yes, and even if this situation happens, I still think Labour could take it. So the other thing we need to talk about is more independents who might get up. So there's a lot of them, a lot of speculation about this. Numerous seats. We've got Flinders in Victoria. Yes, that's right. We've got Hume in New South Wales. We've got Wentworth in New South Wales. We've got North Sydney in New South Wales. We've got Higgins in Victoria. That might go to the Greens, actually. We've got Kooyong in Victoria as well. So we've got all of these seats that could go to independents, and that if this happens, this will be just crazy. This will be crazy, but I think Labour will benefit. As if you can see here, the more that's being won, the less the coalition has, and that means they'll have less to bargain with, and it's going to be much easier for all of these, even though these are traditionally Liberal Party seats, coalition seats. This will be much easier for them to side with Labour, given that Labour's already got almost the numbers. Like, look at this, 66. Like, are they really gonna even if like the coalition wins that seat, like 72, like are they really going to go with a party that has 67 when you've got a party with 72 seats? That's 5 more seats. The Greens are going to be siding with Labour. So yeah, this is what the coalition are worried about. This is sort of a big deal for them if they're going to be worried about all these independents, because it's just going to reduce their number of seats that they can get. And it's going to be harder for them to form government, and it's going to be more attractive to side with Labour, because the Labour will just have, I think these independents will go in a block. So it's not as bad for the coalition as I'm sort of making it out to be, because there will be, if all of these ones get up, there's going to be 5 or 6 of them, and they're going to sort of decide as a block. So they could form a sort of their own coalition with the coalition, and bump up 67 to 74 or something like that. That is possible. It's just look, I just think that the coalition is just so on the nose at the moment. Basically, the only people who like the coalition at the moment are the coalition. Whilst Labour, I feel like, has more friends from these small L independents. I have a friend, he just thinks that all of these small L independents, or independence voices, climate independents, whatever, should all just join the Labour Party. And that's what the coalition are arguing. They're arguing that it's basically just a way for the Labour Party to win, or the Labour Party to get seats off the coalition. There has been some polling that's done that's saying that the Labour will do just as well as these independents in some of these seats, but that's only because the polling is, one, it's seat polling, which is unreliable, but also this polling was done very recently, and you've seen the polls at the moment. So last thing I want to discuss is sort of what spurred me into making this video, is what happened today, or yesterday rather, with the religious discrimination bill, and how a couple of sort of small L coalition members crossed the floor and voted with Labour and the Greens, or Labour I should say, and for amendments which ended up killing the religious discrimination bill. I think it's the member for North Sydney, the member for Wentworth, the member for Higgins, the member for Bass, the member for as one other seat. But they're all these, or almost, I think at least almost all of them are these seats which these independents are targeting, or in Bass's case, it's just the Labour Party that's targeting. So yeah, this might harm the prospects of this independent group. Like it's definitely been a bit of a setback, for these independents, for the coalition, these coalition members have done this because they do have sort of like a leg to stand on to say, hey, look, we defeated this terrible religious discrimination bill, so which shows that we're willing to stand up to this this government, and so you should re-elect us. And so perhaps I honestly, like, my honest opinion is this isn't going to go anywhere. These independent campaigns, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. It didn't go anywhere with Karen Phelps. It went somewhere with Zali Steggall, but that's only because Tony Abbott was an idiot and made a statement saying that Bob Hawke could be ashamed of the current Labour Party. It was a really, really dumb media statement. So yes, Zali Steggall won her seat, and Karen Phelps won her seat when people were pissed at the whole Malcolm Turnbull thing. But they're sort of just, in my opinion, they're just kind of one-offs. And I think these seats, these Liberal seats, will sort of warm up to the idea of, re-electing, their local member who they think is, Goldstein is another one of these seats, I should mention. They're going to warm up to the idea of like, I'm not a big fan of ScoMo, but I like my local member, and I think they would fight for me. And maybe they will like ScoMo by the time of the election. I don't know what's going to happen, but if you've watched my last video, you'll know that I think that people are gonna. Scott Morrison has a way of just like clawing back support, like just really, I don't know, just somehow attracting people. I don't know. He's just got a skill about him. So I really would not underestimate him at this point, even though this week has been like a terrible for him. I would not underestimate him to come back from here. So that's pretty much for this video. Pretty much it. I think, could be very likely that who takes government is in the hands of a few small L Liberals. I guess before we go, I just want to do a little speculation on what the governments would be like with these small L Liberals, like in sort of a minority government sort of setting. For Labour, I think it's going to be a lot easier for them than for the coalition. I think for the coalition, they're going to have a lot of trouble with these people. They're going to stand in the way of a lot of stuff that, the coalition already is having a lot of problems in the Senate, with just a couple of, crossbenchers. But the coalition, they're just going to have a lot of issues if they have to get through all these small, like they've had like the Medivac thing happen, and then this religious discrimination thing happen. It's like they just really have a lot of really contentious legislation, and it's going to be a real problem for them, I think, if they have to deal with these people. Labour, I think that they can manage. I mean, I think they'll just be so happy to be in government that they won't matter. It won't matter to them, that they'll have to compromise on a bunch of stuff. But and it will kind of give them an excuse to not do anything, which I'm sure that they want anyway. So I mean, the coalition want an excuse to not do anything too, but I mean, it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting. I can't. It's probably a bit too hard to speculate at this point. I'll let you guys go. Goodbye.